Hello, friends, and welcome back to Archaeologists in Quarantine on Behind the Trowel. My name is Natasha Billson, and I'll be your host for this evening or afternoon if you're over in the States, or morning even. Today, I'm joined with Michelle Taylor, who's a genealogist and historical archaeologist, and fellow mod on Archaeology and History 101, which is a club on Clubhouse. So, hello, Michelle, and thank you for joining us. I'm so excited to have you.
I'm so excited to be here today. I'm just ready to get right into it, but I know you have some questions to start with, so let's get on.
Oh, I can hear myself. Sorry, 1 second.
Oh, you're fine.
Apologies with technical issues right there. As per usual, it is a live stream, so do expect random hiccups as we go live, but that is the beauty of doing live. Yeah. I think people definitely get to know us.
I know, right? I know. It's just something that has
to be done.
Exactly.
But I think the first question is how did you get into archaeology, and how did you kind of branch out into genealogy from that?
Yeah, so I actually got started in archaeology. I changed majors. So I started off, I wanted to be working in the sciences. And when I started college, I took my first anthropology class, and it was like an elective. And I said, wait, this kind of incorporates everything that I've always wanted to do with linguistics, with art. Like, I just had so many things I liked. And that four field approach was just something that immediately made me really into anthropology. And then over the time, I want to do biological anthropology. And then I did my first excavation. Like, I did a volunteer excavation. And I was like, I love archaeology. And since then, that's been pretty much, my passion, as well as what we're talking about today, genealogy, and seeing how those two overlap in many ways.
Well, this is the thing. I've noticed that it's amazing how the more that we delve into a subject, no matter what that is, it just becomes this it's so hard sometimes to take yourself out of the book, so to speak, because there's so much facts out there. And especially, I can only imagine when people start looking at their family history, it's the second most popular hobby in the US, and probably even around the world. I think it just goes to show that there's something so personable about not only looking at history, but then your family history, your bloodline, so to speak. And I feel like it's something that's been going back in time. The whole concept of a family tree, the whole concept of when you look at families over time, in being from the UK, how we see that, with the family crest and things like this, people are honored to be a part of their family. So it's really interesting to speak to a genealogist. Honestly, it's not something I did think about before, and I'm so happy to have you on, because it's a slightly different approach to history, a slightly different approach to archaeology, but it's so relevant. And if anything, by doing genealogy first, that could get more people interested in archaeology.
Absolutely. I think that's something that I try to advocate with people, that if you start with your kids or younger people and get them interested in genealogy, we would have more people entering fields like archaeology and history and having that passion because they see it firsthand, how it connects with their family's history. So that's what kept me, going when, got into archaeology methods and all the upper level classes. Like, oh man, this is hard. But then, I kept saying, I can still incorporate this back to what I love the most, is family history, and not just my own family history, learning about others. So I'm really excited and hope, people take that away with today's presentation.
And we will have some links within the description below as well, so please do check them out. And I'm sure as we do the live stream, as with most live streams, I'll be adding links throughout the conversation, if not straight after the conversation, because who knows where these live streams end. We end up, talking about some really interesting topics, quite niche, and we're going to be reading more about it afterwards. So I have enabled share screening. And it'd be amazing if we could get an insight into what genealogy is and the steps that people can take to conducting it themselves, should they wish to.
Absolutely. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And I know a lot of people that have mentioned that they were going to watch today. They actually are professionals in the field. So I don't want people that are professionals to feel like, oh, this is going to be a topic or presentation that's really redundant or something they know, but I'm definitely, like you said, I'm touching on it in ways that generally are not done. So let me share my screen. 1 second.
And for our viewers, don't forget that this is an interactive live stream. If you have any questions for Michelle, please head over to YouTube and go into the live chat box and ask your question there. And if we have time, we'll hopefully be able to answer most of them. We're really excited for today's live stream. And here we go. Michelle, over to you.
Thank you so much, Natasha. So today we're going to go dive right into genealogy. I'm going to explore it from several different angles, and it's going to start off with some of the basics so people can get, acquainted with what genealogy is. And I couldn't help but put like a Merriam-Webster definition. There were 4, but this is the one that I felt like grounded what I'm trying to convey today in today's presentation, and that is an account of the descent of a person, family, or group from an ancestor or from older forms. And so when we think of the word descent, another root of descent is a root word for descendant. So descendants are those who are living of those that have passed. So we are descendants of our ancestors. And I've broken this presentation up into 6 subfields, including a brief introduction, going in a little more depth of, what besides me studying anthropology, what really, got me interested in continuing to incorporate archaeology and genealogy into my research. And of course, we're going to go over a lot of those tips. Natasha and I have met through a Clubhouse, and we have a weekly, actually 5 times a week, we present in Clubhouse in our room called Archaeology and History 101. So you'll see that I'm definitely going to give you that 101 basic understanding of genealogy with some of the tips that'll actually even help pros in the field, followed by online resources. I'll cover some of the free as well as subscription resources that are available for you, especially now that we're still dealing with the country reopening. How can we access archives if we aren't able or feel comfortable going there? Then followed by popular DNA tests. Many of us have, given our saliva to one of these companies. So what are those companies doing with our DNA, and how can it benefit us in our genealogy? After that, we'll talk about something very similar to DNA test, which is genetic genealogy. And lastly, collaboration between archaeologists and family historians. So I'll go ahead and tell which tips I will be covering today, starting with using historical records to confirm family stories. Because even earlier today, we had a pre-event in Clubhouse, and so many people shared that we have these family stories. How do we confirm them? You may have told you are related to royalty. You could have said that heard someone say that you had a singer in your family or someone that was a celebrity. So how do you find out if those stories are true? Followed by using these DNA tests and some of their features, such as using xDNA and haplogroups, which I will define and explain to make new genealogy breakthroughs. Because sometimes using the traditional methods of historical records is just not enough. Followed by using historical maps to locate family cemeteries. That is something really dear and passionate to me, because oftentimes with African-American cemeteries here in the United States, they're neglected, and it's something that is rampant throughout the United States, that if we continue to let it go untreated, it will become something that's removed from history forever. And lastly, using OCR technology to expedite your research. So Natasha asked this question early on, what got you into anthropology? But how did I get started with genealogy? Well, actually, I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, and 10 years ago, I moved to Virginia to pursue my undergraduate degree. While living here in Virginia, where I still currently reside, I live close to many repositories, including the National Archives Research Center in Washington, D.C. So there, I was able to, as you see in the photo, look through documents that dated back to the late 1800s, including documents pertaining to my third great grandfather, who was a United States Colored Troops soldier. And so going through those records really brought it home to me, because the first page I read was by his wife, my third great grandmother. And she said, my husband was born in Richmond, Virginia, and that's where I live. So I didn't know this information before I moved here. And it just felt that I knew that, where I ended up, where I'm living now, it wasn't just something that I wanted to do for school. It's kind of felt like I came back home in one way or another. And so while I was doing that research, I started working and doing excavations with other archaeologists at James Madison's Montpelier. So that's where the bulk of my archaeology experiences have been. And that's also where I have ancestral ties to the enslaved community. So it really touches really deep in every way that the research that I've done. And I don't think, there's no other state that I would be able to have this much of a personal connection to for the research that I'm doing. So I've told you how I got started, but how can you get started? So I have a checklist here. I would say the first thing to do is definitely write down those family names, the family surnames, any important dates that you have heard your family say, or important dates you remember, and also the locations, because out of everything, of course, verifying dates is something that's important, but not always available. But the locations will help you go further back and find out where your extended family are. Next, contacting your eldest family member who's living, who can fill in those unknown information that you may not have known. And if possible, record the conversation, whether you film it on your phone or record it with a microphone, but definitely, ask for permission and see if that could be a possibility, because that's something you can continue to keep for future reference and future generations. Next, I would say locate any photos. If someone has a box of photos or obituaries, vital records such as birth certificates, marriage licenses, death certificates of your family members, especially your immediate family. But if they have any older records, definitely make copies of those. But when those records aren't available, check with the local libraries of where your family was from, the historical societies. I stress the historical societies because many times your historical societies, even if you're not in the state or town where your family's from, you can contact those societies and they can tell you information about your family that you may not have known. And lastly, of course, the family history centers that are located all throughout the United States that are very vital resources for genealogists or family historians. So they may be able to obtain those documents that you are unable to track down. And I have a note for adoptees. If you're looking for your family, request like an unamended birth certificate or non-identifying information, because that can really get you started with your genealogy search, but also you have to learn and see what the rules are for your state or country that, it varies from state to state and country to country. So look to see if those are options for you before, you jump in and do the DNA test. That's always like my advice for the first step. And after you do those steps, go ahead and create a family tree. Rather you draw it out or upload it to one of the websites. There's so many websites that you can upload your family tree information, and they also have records that'll help you with your search. I like to definitely stress back when I say write down and type in the point number one. I would say both, because nowadays we have clouds where you can save documents, digitize them and have it somewhere secure, versus just only writing it down. You could possibly lose it, or any other kind of natural disasters or something to happen. So definitely back up your information that you're documenting. So this is such a popular question. What are the online resources that I consider great resources? So I've divided into three categories: historical record resources, like the go-to the go-to resource that I use is newspapers.com. It is a subscription-based service, so you do have to pay a monthly fee, but it's one of the ones I use all the time. But oftentimes these websites have each website has a little bit of something and they can add up quickly. So you have to look and see before you make that subscription, look at their information, see which newspapers they have so you can make the best judgment, followed by genealogy bank and then newspaper archive. Now, newspaper archive is unique because it's often available free through your public library. So I would say before making your subscriptions to any of these websites, definitely see if it's available free through your public local library. Some of the free resources, which can be just as beneficial and sometimes even better, include FamilySearch.org, Chronicling America.llc, the Library of Congress.gov, and the Library of Congress's maps portion of their website, which I'll talk about more in detail in the upcoming slides. Some of the most frequently DNA used websites include Ancestry.com, MyHeritage.com, and DNA Painter. Those are three that I use that have both DNA and historical records incorporated into their sites. So for purposes of this presentation, I will focus on the family trees that are offered through Ancestry, and this will give you a nice view of what it looks like when you make an Ancestry account. What does it look like as you start adding information to your family tree? And so you'll see, let me get the pointer, 1 second. You will see that it starts from the left with yourself. And if you look upwards, that's going to be where you would enter the information for your father's side. And the people above and below your father would be your paternal grandparents. Similar to looking from the bottom, you'll see your mother, and you would add the names for your maternal grandparents and so forth. You'll see as you go farther back, and maybe even one generation, you'll start to have leaves appear. And that's Ancestry's way of showing you that they believe they have records connected to the relatives that are on your tree. So I do say take caution when looking at those hints, because we all know that oftentimes family members, some names are just so common, they may not be your family members. So take a rule of caution when looking at those hints that Ancestry has. So then we would go ahead and look at some of these popular TV shows like Finding Your Roots, Genetic Detective, Long Lost Family, Who Do You Think You Are? There's such a phenomenon with these television shows that have really taken genealogy to the next level. It's really like Natasha said, it's the second most popular hobby in the United States. And I definitely would say it's credited to these television shows that have been able to capture their audiences with really persuasive and compelling stories. Like, for example, I love with Finding Your Roots that Dr. Gates has that book of life that he shows to everyone, every celebrity that he does work with, and reveals their family tree. So I think that's just, look at the reactions of the celebrities. Like, I think we all, when we start to go into our family tree, we find discoveries that kind of leave us speechless at times. So I think with LL Cool J's, his is online. I definitely recommend, if you've never watched Finding Your Roots, definitely watch that episode because it's one of the most compelling episodes on there. And I think a lot of the guests on Dr. Gates' show have, especially African Americans, have a connection that goes back to the same historical event, which is the Great Migration. And the Great Migration was you'll see we have in the map two phases of the Great Migration, where African Americans were leaving the South and moving to northern states for better opportunities, jobs particularly. My family were part of that first wave of people who migrated from the South, from Kentucky up to Illinois and Alabama up to Detroit. So that was just something that, people did for better opportunities. And if you look closely at this map from the census website, you'll see in that first phase, the big pods of people are like in Chicago and Detroit, those big Midwest cities. But you'll see by the time the second wave, we have more people migrating west and more people moving towards New York and Pennsylvania, where the steel industry was becoming the industry that people wanted to move towards and work for. Here is, I'm starting to bring a little bit of my family history into it. This is my grandmother, Catherine Banks, and she was a part of that first wave with my great grandmother, Sophia. They came to Danville before eventually arriving in Detroit. And because of Ancestry and my heritage, Ancestry having that yearbook photo and my heritage having the technology to colorize the photo just makes it so, it brings it to life, But one thing I definitely think people will notice as they read the post is that you'll see I made a note that she was listed as K Banks, but we see here her name is spelled with a C. And so I think when you're researching, if you're having, like, I had searched her name plenty of times on Ancestry, had never seen this photo until this year. And it was only because I started changing up how I was searching. And I think, that is an important tool that you have to keep in mind. You have to switch up house spellings because although you would think a school yearbook would have a name correct, I mean, I knew my grandmother, my mom was able to confirm it was her. But if you didn't know this person, you would have just said, maybe it's not, maybe it's not my grandmother. But just being able to confirm that information by talking to someone, or if you know it firsthand, I think that is just something that's so beneficial to looking through those records. And
Just
yes,
one question, Michelle. Like, first of all, I just love the fact that when you look at the collage of all the different students, I just love your grandmother's post. She's like, yes, I just love it. It's so just amazing. I just feel her so much through that photo.
I knew it right when I saw. I was just so shocked because it shows a thumbnail before you click it, and I said, "That's my grandma." And I was like, "Maybe it's not. The name is, sometimes you get in your mind it's not it." But I was like, she was a sassy lady, so I was like, it made sense. And
honestly, I love that photo. How old is she for freshman class? How old is that? Sorry, because we have different terminologies in the UK.
So she would have been about 14 years old because this was from the 14 or 15. This was from the class. This was the 1937 yearbook. So she would have been 14, 15. She would have been turning
14,
15
15.
that year.
Okay.
14, 15. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So pretty cool. And actually, a couple weeks ago, I found another photo in the yearbook that was also transcribed wrong. But I just love this photo so much. And the fact that my heritage has that feature. And I would tell people, like, even if you don't pay for the subscription, my heritage does let you upload, I think, maybe 10 photos for free to colorize. So take advantage of that feature because it's great. And I've also went in Photoshop and touched it up a little bit more because when you're blowing up a photo that much, it starts to pixelate. But thank you, Natasha. I would love to, go into talking about how these historical records can confirm those oral histories, that family folklore. You'll see I have two documents from the 1940 census where you see my grandmother and my great grandmother living together. So here, my great grandmother is highlighted in yellow and my grandmother is in green. But what makes this story so, and seeing this document so emotional for me is the fact that I always grew up hearing the story that my great grandmother was out of work right after the Great Depression, and she wrote a letter to President Franklin Roosevelt's wife, Eleanor Roosevelt, asking that, she said, "I just need a job so badly. I'm trying to take care of my children. Is there any work available?" And she received a letter back and said, "Arrive to this nursery school tomorrow and you'll have a job." So to turn around and see this document that confirms that she was at a nursery school, she was a cook, and then to find a newspaper article confirming that the First Lady Roosevelt was in Danville during that time period, helping women get jobs. It was just mind-blowing to see something like that, just connecting a family story to records. Like, oftentimes that's not the case. And at one time the family did have that letter and it just disappeared. So it kind of just was disheartening. Like, how do I confirm this? I felt it was true, but that's the thing with genealogy. A lot of times we feel stories are true, but we have to confirm it. And that kind of goes back to the researcher and myself. So I'll go into what I've discovered with the various DNA tests, because there are quite a few on the market. And so I'll just go ahead and go through the DNA tests and then give a description of what these tests do. So first of all, you have Ancestry, which has the largest database of people who've taken their test, followed by MyHeritage, which I've learned is very popular over on your side of the world, Natasha. Like, I hear way more people, and I've connected with much more people from abroad using MyHeritage. That's quite interesting, followed by 23andMe. And you'll see I put the same test 3 times. This was not a typo. It's 3 different type of tests from the same company, Family Tree DNA. And so you'll see that I made a chart as well. All of these test companies offer autosomal DNA tests. And that just means that they offer tests that you can take and it'll tell you information about both sides of your family. It will test your mother and your father's side. And these tests can range from, with US dollars, from $50 up to $200. So I didn't do the conversion, but maybe you could let me know. So then you have Family Tree DNA has just something really unique compared to all the other mainstream companies. They have those mitochondrial DNA tests as well as the Y-DNA. I wish I had spelled it out, but MT stands for mitochondrial DNA. So this is something that's inherited from your mother to mother to mother. So it's not like, someone can't come in and say, oh, well, my great-grandmother, you're my paternal great-grandmother, will that test for that? No, it would have to be mother to mother to mother. And that can be passed down from both sons and daughters. Followed by the Y-DNA test, which is another DNA test that people use. It's a DNA test for males, and it's passed down father to father to father, father to son, son to father to father to father. There we go. And finally, the xDNA, which is not its own test, but xDNA is something that both males and females acquire, but only males will acquire it from their mother, which can come in handy when you're doing really deep genealogy research focused around DNA. And we refer to that kind of genealogy as genetic genealogy. And so a book I would recommend to all those who do DNA tests and are interested in genetic genealogy is this book here, The Family Tree Guide to DNA Testing and Genetic Genealogy, written by genealogist Blaine. I have this book. I've read it from the front cover to the end. It's over and over and over, and I reference it all the time when working with clients, as well as just working on my own personal genealogy. So he defines genetic genealogy in the glossary as the practice and study of using DNA in genealogical research. So basically, traditional genealogy is when you're using written records and all the traditional methods, versus genetic genealogy is bringing in this new phenomenon of DNA testing. So my next genealogy tip. So this one is really interesting for those who are doing genetic genealogy. One thing you'll see, like with 23andMe, they will offer you, they will tell you what your haplogroup is, which you'll see is different variations of characters that date back, going back hundreds of thousands of years on if you're a woman, obviously tracing back on your maternal side. If you're a man, it'll give you your paternal haplogroup. So this is interesting because one method I like to use is, as I learn more of the haplogroups of my ancestors, I label them on the tree. So since my mother took the test, I have the same haplogroup. So I always label it out just like that. My haplogroup is on my mother's side is L2A1A. And that's a haplogroup associated with Africa. So just looking back at those patterns, I am able to know that my grandmother has that same haplogroup and her mother and her mother. So if I wanted to fill in those gaps for what my haplogroup is on my maternal grandfather's side, I would have to get a male who descends from either my grandfather or his father. And then I would have that part of my family history, which I've been able to do on both my mom and father's side. So it's really interesting, but I just wanted to show particularly with how the haplogroup works with the maternal side.
And Michelle, one question. Would you recommend that people, for example, for the first test, do the one where they look at both sides?
I would.
Autosomal, and then if they wanted to delve deeper into one side of the history of their ancestors, then to go to the either or, for what you recommended?
Yes, excellent question. I would definitely recommend autosomal, but sometimes it just depends on what kind of research. If you're just starting off, absolutely autosomal, but sometimes you'll see people are looking to find, confirm something like, like a male may want to know, did my third great grandfather come from Italy, and that his father and his father and his father, the information for that. You may take a test like a Y-DNA test to see if you match up with other males who come from that common ancestor, because that's how family tree DNA's test works. It'll take that information and show you other people who descend from that same family. So if it comes up with a different family, then you have to say, do the legwork to see, is there a hole in my family tree? Is it a hole in the other person's family tree? And, it just takes a lot more work. So I think more people would feel comfortable with the autosomal test. But I think I'm glad. Thank you. It was such a great question. We're back to that pedigree chart, but I already showed it in the last one. So I'm gonna go ahead and go to the next one. So here we have some screen grabs of some of the tests that I've taken, as well as the tests my mom has taken. You'll see I've taken both Ancestry and I've uploaded my DNA from Ancestry to MyHeritage. And you'll see with all three of the tests that there's some very close similarities. Like, first of all, even over here, the third test is my mother's. All three of our tests have Nigeria showing up as the highest ethnic estimates, sorry. And so that's something that's consistent. And when you add the percentages together, you're seeing some big commonalities. But with MyHeritage, one thing that's unique to theirs, they have confidence levels. So I have it set to low here, which allows me to add a genetic group that did not show up when I had high confidence level. And you'll see that my level shows West Virginia, Ohio, and Kentucky, all states I have ancestral ties to. But when I selected high, this did not show up. Versus Ancestry also has communities, and all of those communities do match up. So if you take the test, you're not only getting your ethnicity estimates, you're actually getting your additional communities, which are within 100, the last 200, 150 years. So much more recent than your ethnicity estimates that may be 300-400 years back. So that's pretty cool between those two. But then 23andMe, as you see, is very, very detailed in regions and towns and subgroups for their test. And it was the only test, actually, no, since this is my mom's test, her results are a little bit different than mine. So it's just interesting to look at all three of the tests and just decide what am I looking for out of the test. And with 23andMe, they also offer a health option. So that's something that you may want to consider if you're interested in knowing something about your health. Then I would lean towards 23andMe. But if you want a large database, then go with Ancestry DNA, because with Ancestry, you're able to upload to MyHeritage for free. So you can take your results and what you paid and upload it to another website for free. So I think, that would be the way if you're really trying to get the most bang out of your buck. That's the way to go.
That's quite interesting then. So, because obviously with MyHeritage, I'm guessing they have a slightly different database, right? Yes. So each company or organization, they have their database or their bank of data, and then they're able to do the comparisons of the DNA. Because it's for me, it's like when people show me, or that you see online people seeing their genetics, and they have a map, don't they? And they can kind of see the percentages of where they could be from, or where they are from, I guess. Somewhat factual. It's really, it's mind-blowing. Really, it's wow, really? This is looking at this is crazy. Just the percentages. You're 1% Swedish.
I know it's a lot of ethnic diversity going on, and And I think, that's something else that, is very actually common with African-American DNA. You'll see like the average, like, from what I've read in genealogy articles, that they've done studies on African-Americans and what their percentages look like. And it's usually 75% African, 25% European. So, that's kind of, the range you'll see with like my results. And I mean, obviously it varies, but that's, the estimate that you'll see most commonly. And it is very diverse. And, it makes it interesting when you're contacting people, because when you get your results, it also does allow you to contact your matches, and it allows you to see how close they are related to you. So you can actually reach out to people. And I know, we talked a little bit yesterday. I definitely want to tell you some of the experiences I've had with reaching out to people, especially people who live abroad in other countries, because obviously I grew up here in the United States. I didn't know I would have cousins, somewhat close, that lived in other countries. So that's something else that's really cool. If you're interested in destination traveling, like you may want to visit places that come up in your DNA matches. So it also, with Ancestry, it'll show you like a map of all your DNA family, patterns and migrations. So each of the tests do that. So I won't go into too much detail, but I do want to save time for questions. And same with MyHeritage, but obviously they all look a little bit different. But you'll see here, I changed the confidence level to high, which had changed it removed the genetic groups, and it changed the DNA just a little bit. Followed by MyHeritage, 23andMe, I apologize. And now, just moving into like using my next genealogy tip, using historical maps to locate family cemeteries. Now, this can be, either very easy work or very difficult work. There's no in between. So pretty much now that we have like internet resources readily available, one website I wish I had put down as resources is findagrave.com. There's a volunteer website where millions of volunteers go and search for burial grounds, grave sites for people, and upload the photos and information associated with it. So that's what makes looking at these historical maps even more powerful, because you could look at these maps. This is a map here in Virginia of Louisa County. You can look at these maps, and if you're able to look at the streets and zoom in, because as you see in the photo on the left, you can't make it out. So you really have to either download, and that's why I always recommend going to the Library of Congress, because they're going to have that high quality images of the maps, like in their TIFF files. So they're very large, but you don't have to download them to get into the granular details. And you'll see on those maps, it has surnames associated with families as well as towns. So this is like a small town within Louisa County. I actually brought in some video footage from Google Maps, and I want everybody to pay attention to the left side of the screen. This is where my family's from, in Henderson, Kentucky. As we get closer, you'll see a cemetery actually on the left side, and I'm gonna try to zoom in, and it's Mount Zion Cemetery. This is where many of my family members, ancestors are buried. But you see it's right on the side of a road, and some of the tombstones are knocked over, and it's just really painful. I've visited this cemetery to look for tombstones, but then pay attention as I turn to the other side of the street. This cemetery is well preserved and quite different, than the cemetery across the street. And it just shows that this is not a problem that's isolated here, in this town. This is across the United States. Many African-American cemeteries have been neglected for a long time. And it's just heartbreaking to know that the only way you can see your ancestors' burial site and pay respect is by going on the side of the road and not being able to find many of the tombstones. And that required me, as like a huge theme in this presentation, is working with other historians, working with other genealogists. And the local historian in town told me, he said, there is a creek behind that cemetery, and many of the tombstones have fallen in that creek. So when I couldn't find but only one cemetery, only find one tombstone out of 20 relatives, I had to wonder, where did those tombstones go? And you'll see here is the creek that's behind the cemetery. So on this side of the street is Mount Zion, the African American cemetery. And on this side of the street is Fairmount Cemetery. And you can even tell in the aerial view just how well one is kept up versus the other. And this is a big problem here where I live in Richmond. Lots of debates, or, not debates, lots of discussions and lots of advocacy for protecting African American cemeteries. So the only person I was able to find was my third great grandmother, Fanny Banks. And I was able to determine she was buried there by looking at her death certificate. And so
it's really hard information to digest, to be completely honest. And that's quite shocking. You can see the literal contrast with a road going through it. Like it's disgusting. We did have a comment from Eden, who said, many cemeteries contain unmarked graves. I realized soon enough that I wasn't finding people on Find a Grave because they had no headstone for someone to photograph. That hits home. That's okay, sorry. Please
you're fine.
carry on.
I'm glad you can read the comments, because Eden is my cousin and we actually both have deep ancestral ties to this town and to this particular cemetery, because I'm gonna show the other cemetery we have ancestral ties to as well. But this is like not something that's isolated. I just want to stress that it happens all over. That doesn't make it right. But,
actually, just to address that as well, we did have a guest, Dr. Brittany Brown, who PhD research was regarding this. And I'll see if I can get in contact with her to find out if there's any links maybe that we can put within the description of this video definitely. As well for others. So I will get onto that as well. But by the way, for the links that Michelle has been sharing during this presentation, I have been added them into the YouTube description. So don't worry, straight after you can head over and click on all those links.
Thank you so much, Natasha. I appreciate it. I'll go ahead and show that next historical map. This one's much clearer than the last one. And this one is also from Henderson, Kentucky. And I find this one so interesting because it has so many surnames related to my family. But this P.O. box, this P.O. town, Scuffletown, if you do a quick Wikipedia or Google search for it, it's a ghost town now. So this part of town is much farther away than where I just showed you. But one of the things that have been helpful with looking at this historical map is you see CEM written multiple times on the map, which are cemeteries. So all of these cemeteries listed on here, and comparing it to a modern map, you'll see it literally aligns up very nicely because of how the river is dipped, the Green River versus the Ohio River, which divides the two states between Indiana and Kentucky. So it's really interesting to see like that map and the cemeteries, and then go to Find a Grave and see people have been uploading data from, they've taken those trips. So that's something I feel like is very safe to do. You don't have, go by yourself, go with a group, don't go by yourself and just, take the photos and try to find those cemeteries. And so this is another cemetery, family cemetery, that I came across in the same town. But as you see, I couldn't get anywhere near it because it's overgrown, and I knew there were tombstones there and I couldn't get there to it. But 3 years later, a surveyor in town had petitioned for a walkway to be brought in, laid out to the cemetery. And that was me going into what looks like the forest, but there were tombstones, and I was able to find my ancestors' family tree there. So I want to talk a little bit. This is my last slide and my last tip, and it requires me to exit out of the Zoom. It's using OCR technology to strengthen or to expedite your research. So one of the resources we use, I'm going to exit out of my PowerPoint just for a second and open up. You'll see in that document, although I'm not in full screen, I'll open it back in full screen just for a second. You'll see in this document here is from a will. It's a general index to wills. And so one thing I always encourage people to do is, if you're using websites like FamilySearch or even newspapers.com, if these wills or probate records are in different languages, or there's just a lot of text, you can actually take screenshots of these documents and convert them into OCR readable, searchable text, which will make searching much quicker. So I'm going to show you just how to do that. And the only thing it requires is Adobe Acrobat BC, which if, there is a monthly subscription with this as well. So I'm going to see if I can show you. Do you still see my PowerPoint, Natasha?
Yeah, I still see that.
Okay, great. So let me see if I can stop sharing or share new.
And to our viewers at home, as Michelle is about to share the screen again, don't forget that this is an interactive live stream. If you have any questions for us, please head over to the YouTube live chat box and write your questions there. If this is your first time on Behind the Trowel, don't forget to hit that like, share and subscribe button to stay tuned for future live streams. Okay.
Do you see FamilySearch.org
yes,
now?
I see it now.
Awesome. So the way I usually go to find FamilySearch.org is a website that is affiliated with the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. And part of the website is lots of digitized probate records, every kind of record for free. So this is why I tell people this is the first free website you should look at, because it just has an amass amount of records. And one of the things it has is probate records. So I'll go ahead and type in Kentucky and it'll take me to probate records. And one thing I'm always looking at is wills, because wills have so much information that can help you, break those brick walls. But you can use this technique with any kind of document. I'm just showing you how to do it with a historical document. That's if it wants to load. And so I'll go ahead and click Henderson, because I know which record I'm looking for, and will index. So with the will index, they have the actual wills on there, but they have a will index where you can look for the surname without having to go through thousands of pages of wills. But then again, if you don't want to go through 100, hundreds of pages, because not everything on FamilySearch is digitized, or transcribed, I should say. Not everything's searchable. So my technique is I usually will put it in full screen, but for purposes of this demonstration, I will do it without putting it full screen. And then I'll snip. I'll take a snip. I don't know if you can see me taking a snip, because I think it only shows one screen, but whichever way you take screenshots, do that and try to grab as much of the document as possible. When you take that document and take a screenshot of it, hold on. You'll have, save it wherever you want on your computer. But then the next step is going into Adobe Acrobat DC. So 1 second as I switch screens one more time.
No, this is great. It's like live time. People can see like the process. And
I know a lot of times people think, well, wait, how do I take a screenshot, which is a PNG or JPEG file, and convert it? But that's a great thing with Adobe, Acrobat DC. It converts it right there for you. So you just take your screenshot and upload it into the file, and it kind of does the rest on its own. But I'm just making sure that I can switch screens one more time so it'll show up before I switch out. And let's see, do I see the document? Desktop. Okay, found the document. And I'm going to try to share the screen again. So bear with me and thank you for your patience. Okay. Are you still seeing the same screen? Oh, actually,
I can see everything you're doing.
Yeah. In the screenshot, it has you in it. Well, we'll see how that looks.
I should have smiled. Damn it! I was just concentrating. I was reading everything that was on the page there. I'm too engrossed.
I'm going to take the screen grab one more time, just so we'll have it with everything on it. I know. Are there any questions? Why? Because this is my last.
Yeah, okay. So we have a few coming in actually. First of all, we had some hellos. Hi Kenneth, hello Eden, Just Enchantments, Cynthia, What's Up Ukraine, Robin, Van, Animator, Larissa, Ray, Erin, Shelby, Lala, Nax 19. Lovely to see you all in the live chat box, and to everybody else who's watching today's live stream. Thank you all for joining us as we delve into genealogy, family history. And we did have a few comments. Obviously, Eden actually did mention that you two had recently discovered that you were cousins from your work. That's crazy. It's just amazing how you can connect by doing this and taking a DNA test.
Yes, it is, because you never, many times it ends up being someone really close, you that lives near you, or you've known them and didn't know their connection. So that's kind of the mind-blowing part for me. It's like you never realize how close your family can be and how much you have in common once you meet with them. Because Eden also does genealogy professional, she does it on top of her full-time work. So it's like, I guess it's a genealogy bug in our family. But I'm gonna go ahead and try to share this screen for Adobe and see if it works. Unfortunately,
sorry, just to say as well, Lala, Michelle does assist others in their genealogy search, and we can get into that question more so just after the presentation.
Absolutely. So it came out blurry. I think, I knew it would be at least one technical glitch in our process, but I will still give you the steps so you'll know when you take that screenshot to not use something this blurry. But you'll see in the file on the right side, you'll have an option. Actually, you have two ways to do it. You can either go to the side and click edit PDF, and that'll go ahead and try to convert the text. But since this is blurry, it's probably, I don't know how well it would do with something this granular, but generally it will transcribe it all. And if it's in a different language, it will do that as well. So I always recommend people, if you have ancestors that are from other, countries and you don't know how to speak the language, use this feature, because then you can highlight all of the text and upload it into one of the translator websites, free translator websites. So that's, that's my big pointer. I love everyone I tell, they're like, oh, I'm going to use that one. So I definitely wanted to spend some time on it. And I'll go back to the PowerPoint presentation, but that was my last, thing. I did want to talk briefly about, let's do new share. Just that, what we talked about a little bit, collaboration, like how are historians, archaeologists, how are we going to work with the public? Well, how are we going to work with other genealogists, those family historians in a family who may not be professionals, but they know the history on the back of their hands. So how do you, get in, work together to do that? And you'll see in the photo here, like I just credit so much to James Madison's Montpelier and their staff, because I've grown over the last 9 years of, doing archaeology work and working with them, because they care so much about their descendant community and working with other family historians. So I think you want to start to see more historical institutions taking that approach, and just even in academia and other places where a lot of times research is very guarded, but there's so much you can learn from those who know the family history, whether it's written or not written, because they could lead you to something you may not have discovered. And on that note, thank you so much. I am done. I know Natasha said she put this information in the YouTube link, so take a moment to write it down, but you can see it all in the YouTube link, and I will stop sharing my screen.
I missed that. Is that the doorbell sound? It brings back so many memories, that sound. No, that's a good memories.
Thankfully, no one's at my door. It's my clock that's 5 minutes early. So I do know now the time is 12:55.
So we used to have a doorbell ring, and it was that sound. But actually, maybe it was the clock first. I don't know. It's like a childhood memory, so could actually be a clock. But I love it. Oh, I'm gonna now just like replay that one sound. Just ask you to record it, because nostalgia. As we talk about family history, isn't it? It's all about the nostalgia and wanting to know more.
Nostalgia.
I've just quickly adding in your contact information.
I appreciate that. I can't see I was like, should I look at the comments? And I was like, no, Natasha's gonna look at everything. So I'm just
It can become very distracting sometimes.
I know. That's why I said no. I don't want to see you handle it.
No, you know, it's been so interesting. I feel like we have covered so much, and it's one of those things that, you know, maybe in an hour or so when I'm thinking about it, more questions will come up as per usual, as it always happens. But it was just really interesting to look at all the different avenues that you have to take to approach genealogy and the study of family histories. You know, you mentioned oral histories, and I feel a lot of people don't consider that as important. They don't know ways to document oral histories. You know, we think, oh, we can just record it, but not everybody has the facilities or even know how to, or where do they put it afterwards? Where can they send these recorded files? So I'm curious, these archive centers that you have mentioned, are they mainly documents or like, you know, newspaper clippings or whatever, or are there options to hear oral histories?
There are options. So the Library of Congress is definitely, and the National Archives have their audio recordings online. One of the most popular ones associated with African American history is the slave narratives from the WPA project. So those are available. Those are interviews with those who were enslaved and living, you know, throughout 20th century America during the WPA project. So that's one of the options people have. But also, since I am, you know, I work in higher education, I would tell people definitely look at your university libraries, because many times they will take your recordings. So but like you said, one thing to keep in mind, like just recording on your phone is great, but being able to like rent like a Zoom recorder or invest in that kind of technology will definitely improve the quality of your audio when you're interviewing people, or even taking time to do a sit down video interview. So like I have come across that very much since I do equal amount of work in both Kentucky and Virginia. There's a lot of information through the University of Kentucky's libraries database. They have a lot of audio recordings on there that are associated with people from that region. But I think, you know, just looking at your state university and private collectors, because a lot of times donors will donate these everything from their family collection, either their family papers, recordings, you know, etc. So I do see that a lot actually in academic institutions.
And I do feel now it's definitely becoming more accessible due to the internet and just having digital copies. I do find that maybe, you know, the next decade or so, it'll be a lot more easier for people to actually search their family history.
Definitely. And I guess, you know, I worked in the library for like, prior to my current job, I worked in the library for like almost 5 years. And I think with the audio files, I think it's great because librarians are so meticulous with making sure they capture all of that information in the metadata. So if you're searching through their collections, you're going to be able to type the keywords that you need to look for. Like, I'm looking for this family, or I'm looking for a story of someone who worked at this place. Because, you know, sometimes we don't see we don't understand how a small story could be so much bigger when you really look back at it and see that, you know, it was documented. You may have thought, oh, that was nothing. Then you see it turn around in a newspaper and you're like, whoa, it really has a meaning.
I'm just strolling through our comments here. And let me see the best one to go with. Yes, we will be putting a link into our Telegram group, which is the Archaeology and History 101. I'll actually add the link to Telegram within the description as well, just after the live stream. And you can see all the resources on there as well. So I will be sure to share them on there for you all. Oh, in regards to your grandmother's photo, we had a few comments. From Venus Tellis, beautiful. She was lovely and filled with personality. That's from Robin. Even another comment from Ray Cousins, which said Michelle is one of the greatest genealogists I've ever met. Well, if you're looking for a genealogist, hiya Michelle. Her email is in the description below, so don't forget to drop her an email. Actually, question. So how do you find being able to search those that are based in the States to Europe? So I'm assuming, you know, we have to somewhat specialize in within genealogy in itself. So I'm assuming you specialize more so in the States directly.
Correct. Yes, I specialize in the States and in the upper South. So that the states that I talk a lot about, with Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, that's the upper South. If you're looking at a map, that's like my expertise region. But I think with, many of the people I've connected with, it's been just fascinating, especially like the DNA, like using the DNA to connect with people. Like Venus, she's my cousin. I connected with her through DNA. Robin, she's my cousin in my head through Clubhouse, like it's just amazing, like, being able to connect with people through all these like platforms, but just submitting your DNA and finding out, hey, this is my relative. It's just, yeah, it's so cool. I think, I would encourage people, if they're interested in looking for it, look for it, but,
Well, this is fascinating. Eden just mentioned about how she was able to establish your connection, and that was through studying your ancestors' USCT pension file record. And UST stands for United States Colored Troops, who served in the Civil War 1861 to 1865. And I hate that title. USCT, anyway, that was back then.
I mean, that's the time period, but
that was the time period. Yep.
That is, they have a museum here in the States, in Washington, D.C., devoted to the United States Colored Troops. And it's, one of the most detailed records you can find. Like if you have an ancestor, I would tell anyone who's searching African-American history, if you can find connection to that, a soldier, it's the most detailed records you'll find. That's not like everyone I talk to agrees with that statement. And it's like, I've looked through so many of the records, including, the records that both Eden and I have ancestral connections. But going back to the Europe connection really, really quick, I think what has stood out to me with uploading my DNA to like these third parties, like MyHeritage and some of the other third parties that you're able to upload to, is that I've connected with, people that look like me in other countries. I've connected with cousins in France who are from the Caribbean, and they've shared their family history with me. I've connected with people who don't look like me, and they're like living abroad as well. Like, it's very, like, it just shows, like, for me, you start to realize, like, if you know your family history and are open and empathetic, you start to realize, like, everyone is like the same. We're all human. We have these stories, but you talk to other people and they have the same experience. They have hardworking parents who wanted the best for them. It's just a beautiful thing, being able to connect with people in such a way, and people being open to it. Because I don't think someone would do the test and not be open. I mean, there's some, but for the most part, most people that do the test are really open to that new opportunity.
And we did have a question that came in, I think it was via Instagram, and they were asking, when you showed the slide, I think you had the little green leaves on it, and you could see like ancestors who kind of you could contact. Now, are these generally more US based, or no, it actually doesn't matter?
No, it doesn't matter. So with the leaves, that's like, that would be for like your ancestors, but for like when you do your DNA, the people that show up, you like can contact, and you can even search to see, like, if you're looking for people in a certain country, or you're looking to see if like, pretty much they have so many search engines built into their database. So like, oh, my highest region is Nigeria. You can type in Nigeria and see who you match, who has family from Nigeria. So it's pretty, cool. Like, you can literally say, or, oh, my family's all from Henderson, Kentucky. So I type that in and it's going to show me who else has family from these really unique small areas.
Wow. And then Eden also commented that the USCT records contain enslavers' information, interviews of the soldiers that give their life stories and their family histories, or their family members' life stories. That's really quite interesting. So is this the main go-to resource for enslaved individuals then, if you want to track those type of ancestors down?
Yeah, it's definitely right. It's at the top. I would definitely say it's at the top, but it's unique because not every state that had slavery active had lots of people, lots of men going and enlisting into the war because they were enslaved. Like some men who served obviously were freed, but it would have been like something like our aunt, like, my third great grandfather, he was enslaved. So when we're reading the document, his wife explained like he was a slave, that was her wording. So like, that pretty much inferred he had to, either flee away to go into the war, or maybe some other option, but more likely, that. So I think that's why I'm glad she's, stressing that, because that's one of the records I tell people, try to find it. This is such a great record.
I would add the link into the description box straight after the live stream as well. We did have a few more logistical questions, so I'll quickly just answer that. Selena, yes, you can actually see these slides via the YouTube link. So Veronica as well, this is for you. This is on YouTube. This is the link. The link that you're watching it on now is the link for where the video will live. So you can watch it at any time. You can come back to it at any time. So at your viewing pleasure, and it will be converted into a podcast at some point in the future. I can't give you a date yet because that involves me editing it. And we hopefully will have a short version as well at some point in the future. But don't worry, as it's YouTube, anytime you can just click back and watch and take screenshots if you need to and things like that. And you can always leave a question for us in the comments section, which is a separate window to the live chat box. So you can leave a comment in the comment section after the live stream is finished, and then we can always come back to those questions at a later stage, either on YouTube or on Clubhouse, where Michelle and I both hang out regularly, chatting about different topics. Every week is different, so you'd have to check that out separately. But I'll put the links for that as well in the description box.
Huge shout out to Selena and Dr. Peppers. Both, like, Selena's my best friend and Dr. Peppers is my cousin. So I'm so glad to see so many people. Like, thank you for attending. And also, while you're giving all these plugs, make sure people subscribe to your YouTube channel. Please plug yourself. I encourage it. Please click the subscribe button. Natasha has great content, and we're probably gonna collab on more stuff. So if you check out her work, you'll definitely keep watching.
Oh, thank you so much. It's one of those things. It's always easy to talk about somebody else, but never yourself. And you don't even I don't even think about it. I'm terrible at talking about myself. I always forget, for starters. I'm just
you're selfless. You just think of others. Like, that's why I've told you many times. I'm just very thankful for you presenting this opportunity. So great.
Well, thank you for agreeing. Not everybody likes doing live streaming because you never know what's going to happen. It is literally live. We're talking to each other on Zoom, and people are watching us on YouTube and on Facebook and on Instagram and other avenues as well. So it's amazing how internet can connect us all pretty fast. And we had this lovely comment here from Sasha, who said, "I think your family is proud of you and grateful for what you're doing for them." So that was in regards to the genealogy. Yeah, that's sweet, very sweet. And some other comments coming in. Cynthia says, "Wonderful presentation, thank you." Eden, "I learned so much, thank you." The real deal, great presentation, really insightful. Kenneth, great presentation. Michelle, Jonah Kemp. Michelle is fantastic. She's the best. Love the broadcast today. Bernard Kemp, thank you, Kemp. From Danielle. Oh, I think Danielle is from one of our regulars at the AH101. So hello, Danielle. She said, "Thank you so much for such a lovely and informative presentation today. I look forward to trying to incorporate these tips." Brilliant. That's what we want to hear. It's so difficult trying to understand these tests, and I feel like the book that you recommended, I added that in because even the language that you were using, the hello groups that you were saying, they've all got the code. So that's great that you've got a code, but what does that mean, and how does that help one to understand when they're trying to research? I think that was really insightful. And even the map explaining that, because again, you see these pictures when you're trying to choose which DNA kit to take, and you're like, well, that's great, these are lovely images, but what does that mean for me? So I do hope it helps others to choose.
I think, and I hear that all the time, I think no one expects when they receive the results that it's this in depth, and you actually have to read books. Like, it's they have tutorials and everything built into these websites, but you really got to go to school to understand it. And that's why when in the description it said we're going to talk about the study of genealogy. This is not something you're seeing in universities in the States, unis abroad. You're not seeing that as a field in many colleges. It's something that's very limited. You have like a handful of universities that offer that as a degree type of program. So it just makes it a lot more difficult.
Well, this is the thing, like how do people, not even how do you approach studying genealogy? Like when because right now you're doing your master's on it.
History, yes.
Yeah. So you're studying the history of genealogy.
Well, just my degree is going to be in history, but I'm able in my program to write about genealogy because they actually go hand in hand. But like I think we've had that discussion before offline. A lot of academics like frown upon genealogy. Like you said, a lot of people have issues with oral history. So there's some things about genealogy that it is like a heavy research-based field, but sometimes it's just not considered academic enough. And I think that's why you don't see it across the school. So most people are self-taught, or they do academies. They have like workshops or webinars. So it kind of is, you become self-taught in a way, unless you do some formal training, but still requires you to do a lot of, self-learning.
Well, that's the thing there in itself. There's pros and cons to everything, and that's in itself kind of a dilemma. It's quite problematic if you have to do it yourself, because then who do you turn to if you need help? I mean, I can imagine there is like it is an industry. It's a well-known industry. The popular mediums that you showed, a few of those, we have the same in the UK, and I've actually forgotten the name of it now. But when I saw the photo, and I was like, yes, I remember watching that as a kid. I think, who do you think you are? That one.
Yes. They have fantastic.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I think with the programs, pretty much they do have organizations like for genetic genealogy, you have like the ISOGG, which is like the International Society of Genetic Genealogists. So it's growing way faster than, the popularity of it's growing faster than the, level of professionals that are, equipped to do so much of the work. But that's the cool thing, I think it encourages people to learn it on their own. And, if you get great, you feel like you're great at it, you can help others. So I think, for me, I'm in the Association for Professional Genealogists. And, when you join these organizations, it's like a lot of times you don't want to have to pay lots of dues to different places, both, archaeology and genealogy. It's like, wait, now I got to pay dues for two different places. But they have the ethics and, code of ethics to follow and the standards. So being affiliated with an organization can be really beneficial to making sure you're, up to par with your work.
And to our viewers at home, before we start wrapping up today's amazing live stream, if you have any questions for Michelle, now is the time. Quickly type it in so we can get to it. And this is quite a cool suggestion from Sasha. It's a really cool idea to connect archaeologists and genealogists and historians to create a big online database like Wikipedia. Now, there are a couple of websites that you have mentioned, but it'd be interesting to have that approach actually, where it's
Yeah, I love that. Whoa, that's cool. A good one. Are we going to be able to get everybody on board? I think genealogy. I mean, a girl can dream. I hope so. I think, people are much more receptive, and that goes back to like that last slide. Like you're seeing historical institutions, cultural institutions taking that step to like bringing in people with firsthand knowledge, even if they're not a PhD or, have any kind of three letters after their name. So I think we got to get away from that, because so many people, you think about your own family that can tell you some history that is not documented anywhere, and it's true. So I would love to see something like that.
Yeah, it's really interesting what you mentioned there. I think that comes down to the unconscious bias that we trust somebody who happens to have a certain esteemed qualification. And that's just what we're taught. It's what we grow up with. So it's quite interesting. It's true. Sometimes we should take account of oral histories. They are important, and they should be recognized within the institution as being significant. I mean, things are changing now, but it's taken time. It depends where you are in the world as well. I know that from when I've traveled. I remember the first time I actually came across oral histories was when I was working in Barbados. I did an internship over there. and we had an exhibition that we were curating called Riots in the Land, and that's where they were getting locals to give their oral histories, and the whole exhibition was around it. And for me, I was like, wow, it's the first time I've heard of this. Why is it the first time I've heard of this, you know? So it's definitely a discipline in itself that needs to be given more to. So definitely, if anybody is interested, I'll put some more links. I'll add some more links. There's gonna be a lot of links, I think, by the end of this live stream.
There was a lot of content. I was trying to narrow it down, but I was like, you know, genealogy is broad, you know, it's very broad field. So just trying to hit those key, you know, I felt like, you know, everything we like our model with our clubhouse group, you know, making sure we're bringing in those who are enthusiasts as well as professionals. So like, I was just trying to find that balance of, oh, you enjoy genealogy, you want to get into it. Here's those tips. Oh, you're a professional. Here's some tips from the professional perspective.
I'm so sorry. A massive wasp has just come into my light, and I'm freaking out.
It was like the bird. Oh my
God. I've not seen a wasp for, well, it's now becoming summer. So I'm freaking out. Yeah, I think we might have to turn that. I might have to just turn that light off. I'm freaking out. I'm so sorry. This is what happens on live streams. You can't control anything, and I just want to run. Oh my goodness.
Let's conclude then.
Yes, Latika, I will add that. I don't know if there'll be any links to that exhibition because this was in 2012. But I'll see if I can find it online. Again, it was called Riots in the Land, and it was based in Barbados. And I had the absolute pleasure of working on it. Fantastic 2 months. And it's actually where I met Dr. Brittany Brown and then stumbled across her in Instagram. Yeah, this is how crazy life is. It's there. Sorry, Sasha's just come down. No. Oh, no, he's freaking out as well. Is it going under the table? It's not Hornet. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm live on YouTube. I forgot. I'm literally freaking. No, just leave it. I'm so sorry, everybody watching right now. I'm so sorry, Michelle.
I'm not gonna lie.
Oh my God, I'm freaking out. Okay, I'm gonna compose myself.
I know I had to do it too. I was like, I don't want to laugh, Natasha.
No, don't do anything, please. Well, let's just wrap up the live stream. I'm so sorry, everybody. If anybody has any other questions for Michelle, please then leave them in the YouTube link in the comment section below, because actually, to be honest, sorry, we will finish this. Michelle, is there anything else that you would like to add before we finish today's live stream?
No, I don't think so. No. I mean, we'll do something again, even, you know.
We will. I think we might even make a short video about genealogy. It'll be quite fun. And I'd actually like to look more about tracing enslaved individuals, how we can track our history on that. I think that would be really insightful for some individuals, because I think that in itself is quite a topic. And when I've been doing my research over the past few years as well, I've noticed that there's a lot of people who'd like to know more about their heritage, and they just don't know the avenues to go down. So I'd love to speak to you about that offline, and we can maybe think about something to produce online to help the community. But again, thank you so much for joining us, and I do apologize for my outburst.
You're fine. You're fine.
I'm going to take a photo. I'll take a photo and I'll send this to you afterwards, and I might even put it on Twitter. I'll put it on Twitter so you can see how big this thing is. It's massive. It's huge. Okay.
Well, you take
Michelle,
care.
Yeah, no, seriously, thank you so much for today's live stream, and I look forward. I'll be speaking to you on Clubhouse anyway next week, and if anybody would like to contact Michelle, all her information is in the description below. And again, don't forget to give this video a like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you all next week. So thank you all so much for tuning in. See you all. Bye.